Hey everyone. All right, so we'll get started now. So thanks again for joining this webinar and welcome. Today we're going to talk about the evolution and current state of cyber insurance, as well as the growing SOC requirement that we're seeing in the market. So just as a quick introduction, I'm Sarah, Head of Product Marketing at CYREBRO. I'll be your moderator for the webinar. CYREBRO created the world's first Security Operations Center platform, or SOC platform, which is leveraged by our global partners to provide state-level cybersecurity to businesses of all sizes. Our SOC platform combines critical capabilities like SOC, like 24/7 monitoring and detection, incident response, threat intelligence, and more. And all combined within an interactive platform, giving businesses the ability to have their own SOC without the heavy lifting of building and managing it. So that's a quick few words about CYREBRO. So let's talk about a couple things before we jump in with our speakers. So the webinar is interactive. We'll have 2 polls for you to answer at the beginning and at the end. You can obviously also submit your questions at any time in the questions tab, and we'll collect them and answer them live at the end. If you have any technical trouble, just reach out in the chat and we'll try to help you. And following the webinar, we're going to have a short survey to get your feedback about the session. We want to know if you'd enjoyed it, if you enjoyed the topic, because we always want to improve the webinars to bring you the most relevant topics. And so without further ado, we will get started. So we have 2 guests with us today who are going to discuss, like I said, the evolution of cyber insurance. And so with us from CYREBRO, we have our CTO, Ori. So if you can give us a few words about your background, Ori, that'd be great.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining. Ori, I'm the CTO here at CYREBRO. Been with the company for about 7.5 years. Before that, I was the director of cyber operations within the company. Essentially, my background is sort of cyber and security before it was called cybersecurity. Back then, it was called information security. But that's the essential background.
Cool. Thank you, Ori. And we have also Shay with us today, head of cybersecurity at Howden. So we're happy you joined us. Shay, can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah and Ori, for the invitation. My name is Shay Simkin. I'm the global head of cyber insurance at Howden. Howden, for those of you who do not know, is a global broker based out of London. We have offices, or we operate in 50 countries around the globe. We have 14,500 employees. Myself started in insurance over 35 years ago, and I would say in the junctions between technology and the insurance, in pretty much the same as you are in the 90s. Writing my first cyber policy was the word cyber was not even around, and I'm glad to be with you.
Thanks a lot. All right, so let's jump in. So today, to give you a quick understanding of the agenda, we're going to run through a few topics, starting with the current state of cyber insurance and some of the drivers that we're seeing for change. Then we'll discuss the newest requirements for cyber insurance, as well as how to build cyber resiliency with a security operations center. And we'll learn about how SMBs can qualify for cyber insurance, and then we'll wrap with a live Q&A. So before we get started, here's our first poll. So you should see it now on your screen. And so we'll give you a minute or so to answer. You can submit your responses. Okay, we'll give it one more minute. A few more seconds. Okay. So the question was, what's your biggest concern when it comes to getting cyber insurance? And it looks like more than half of you answered being kind of worried that coverages doesn't fully cover the cost of a cyber breach, followed by qualifying the price and then understanding which one to choose. So maybe at the end, we can have our speakers kind of address some of those. So now let's jump into our first topic. So what is the current state of cyber insurance and what are the factors that are driving change in the industry? So this would be for you, Shay.
Yes, so I think, when you talk about the cyber insurance market, we first have to go back and talk a little bit about what is the driver for people to buy cyber insurance. And as you can see from the chart here, this is the Allianz Risk Barometer. It's done on a yearly basis. Allianz is a big financial institution, an insurance company, and they rate the 10 largest risks facing every business around the world today. And cyber, of course, is number one. If we look at number two, business interruption, and we know that supply chain is totally computerized today, then in essence, one and two is one. And still people are dealing with the what we call the tangible assets. So most people in this webinar and our clients around the world are still insuring the physical assets that they have. They do not even think about not insuring fire, theft, or any other types of liability. And I think, first of all, what is driving the market in the last couple of years is the understanding of people. I think COVID, if it has done anything good for us, it demonstrated to people how dependent we are on computer systems and how dependent we are on connectivity. And if we don't have connectivity, our businesses can easily can go bankrupt or can die. And I'll give you an example. Our business, which is based in London, is during COVID times, because we had good computer systems, we were not just able to survive, but able to continue and grow the business. I think most of our clients around the world today understand that they need to address this. And we will see maybe later, by the growth of the market in the last couple of years, why they understand it and what are the projections for this market to go. But three things that we are seeing in the cyber market today, and we'll talk about them in the webinar. I won't dwell too much on the threshold and the need for resilience and the need to have good cyber hygiene and all controls in place, because that's something we will deal later when we talk about controls. But other two things that we are seeing is, of course, the shortage of capacity in the market, because this is a very technical type of insurance, and because the market has suffered quite substantial losses over 2021, mainly driven by ransomware. Ransomware is the biggest driver today for cyber claims. When we entered the COVID, we started seeing I would say a flood of claims coming mainly from territories such as Russia, Ukraine, and other parts of the world. I would say two or three things about these ransomware events. First of all, they were not just the frequency of the event that we saw going up, but we also saw the severity. So if a few years ago we were seeing threat actors asking for a Bitcoin or a Bitcoin and a half, now they're asking for millions of dollars. So it's the severity, but more worrying is the sophistication of these attacks. And it's no longer just a demand for ransomware. It's what we call double ransomware, and the latest one is the triple ransomware. I'm sure that all of you know the term triple ransomware. If not, Ori can maybe elaborate a little bit. But this is the latest thing that we're seeing now in the market. And I would say that over the last 2 or 3 years, the insurance market is still dealing not just with the ransomware event, social engineering, fraud, and so on, but it's also dealing with two things that are very hard to quantify. One of them being the systemic events like NotPetya or WannaCry, which are things that can easily kill the cyber insurance market. And of course, the issue of aggregation. So if AWS, Azure, or any of those clouds go down, we will see all of a sudden thousands and thousands of claims coming from different parts of the world. This is something the insurance market doesn't have to deal in other types of insurance, and this is still something which is I would say a big cloud over the development of the cyber insurance. Having said that, it is the fastest growing product in the insurance market, growing at about 27-28% year on year, which is by far higher than any other type of insurance. And people around the world are buying the product now. It's a very robust product. So maybe later on, when we answer the poll questions, I'll talk more about what is worrying our audience.
Great. So let's move on to the next topic. So again, Shay, can you talk about some of the new criteria that we're seeing in order to qualify for cyber insurance?
Yes, definitely. So as a result of the 2 years that the insurance market experienced in 20 and 21, basically, I think until mid 21, they were very naive in the way that they underwrote cyber insurance. A few years ago, you could basically buy cyber insurance if you had a firewall and antivirus. Not too many questions asked. You were welcomed by the industry if you were one that wanted to buy the policy. But one of the things that the industry needed to do is to rethink the whole way of underwriting and controls needed in order to get the what we call the right cyber hygiene. And the whole philosophy around underwriting changed in mid 21. So underwriters started looking much deeper into those controls that clients have. And you can see in front of you what today is the, I would say, the minimum threshold for any client wishing to buy cyber insurance. It was quite difficult because a lot of our clients, even if they were large corporations, small, mid-size, or whatever, even if they were about to renew the policy, they were confronted with these controls that they needed to do. And as you know, placing EDR is not something that you do over a week. It takes time, and making sure that you have MFA and MFA around your privilege accounts is something that takes time. And basically those clients that were not able to reach that level of hygiene were not able to buy the policy. I think it's pretty much industry understanding that without a fire alarm and without bolts on the door and without seat belts, you can't insure cars and property. And it was that understanding that really we need to dig deeper. Today, some would say even too deep into our clients' hygiene. One of the things, and that Ori, maybe it's something that you can comment on, but one of the first things that underwriters are looking for is, of course, a SOC. In the same way that if you have property or your house or your business and needs to be connected to some kind of a monitoring system to see when you're not there overnight or when you're not there over the weekends or vacations. The SOC is the equivalent in the tech world, and today it is expected from every one of our clients around the world to be connected either to its own internal SOC if they're big enough and they do it, and for those that don't, to connect into SOCs like CYREBRO. And I'll let Ori please explain to clients why the resilience and why why underwriters put such an emphasis on the SOC.
Sure, absolutely. I think before I deep dive into what a SOC is and what a SOC does, I think from my experience, there's a lot of misalignment of what a SOC is, either underestimating it or overestimating it. So I'd like to define the borders of what a SOC is. And if to carry on your alarm example, the SOC is the Swiss Army knife of the environment, right? It's not here to replace your network engineering, and it's not here to replace your IT infrastructure guys and girls. It's basically the Swiss Army knife related to security. So if you have an alarm and nobody understands why the alarm is ringing or how to deal with it and how to stop the alarm, then the alarm is no good. That's exactly the point that you made in regards to having an antivirus. If the antivirus is alerting on someone and you don't know how to handle that, then what is the alarm good for? A SOC is made out of two core components. One is the technology, and that's the old term that everybody knows, SIM SOC. So SIM is the technology, SOC is the operation on top of the SIM. But that's very old school. If you want to be more precise today, you'd need to say SIM, SOC, SOAR, intelligence, DFIR. You know, there are many layers from a technology perspective that a SOC would need to have. On top of all those things, you'll need the right personnel to operate it, right? And we see the slide before us, there's just a fraction of what you would require in order to meet the insurance. Lots of technologies, lots of different interfaces within environments, and your SOC and the people within it need to know how to operate it. Everything is agnostic, the technology is changing, and you might have a email filtering tool one day and you want to change it. You want to make sure that the SOC knows how to operate the new system. It needs to evolve with the business, right? That's what a SOC does. It's a 24/7, 365 monitoring and response operation center that's technology agnostic, that can grow with the business and not the other way around. That's the core element I want to highlight.
So tell us, Ori, how can businesses build cyber resilience using a security operations center?
Right, good question. I think it goes down to the core function of you cannot protect or you cannot better something if you don't see it or fully understand it. So the SOC is here to help with the cyber resilience, first and foremost by highlighting the issues, deploying the relevant system across the environment, knowing how to read the outputs of those systems, right? And then making sure that we're pushing the right action items to the right departments within the operation. So if we talked about multi-factor authentication, if we talked about all kinds of, I call it broken business, right? The business is cyber is not the main core of the business. So usually the business does things that are easy for business and are beneficial for the business. The SOC is here to say, hey, listen, I know that we need to run forward, but we also need to look and making sure that we're on the right path and we do it securely. So by highlighting those things and seeing them and creating trends and catching trends, this is how the SOC can help build the resilience basically of the business.
Just to take one point, Ori, you know, we see a lot of I'd say thousands of cyber events per year as an industry, and as you know, a lot of these threat actors are always looking to catch you off guard. When you know, just on Thursday night or Friday night or Christmas or evening, and we have so many events starting with an alerts coming from the SOC and you know, driven into the IT people. Look, we're seeing something suspicious, which of course, if you manage to catch them when they're still not in your crown jewels, I think that that's definitely something that helps us as an industry, and I think that's why we put a lot of emphasis on that.
Absolutely. I can't tell you the exact number statistically, but the amount of incidents that we see on Friday afternoon is tremendous. I mean, attackers are
Exactly.
smart. They know that it's the end of the week, it's the end of the day, and that's exactly when you're most vulnerable. And that's exactly where a SOC is here. You know, it's 24/7, it doesn't rest. We know those tricks.
Great. So let's switch gears a little bit, since I know this applies to a lot of our audience members. SMBs, as we know, are just as vulnerable as large enterprise businesses. We've all seen the statistics showing that a large majority of SMBs are hit with cyber attacks and they won't survive those attacks. So how can an SMB with a more limited budget and less access to cybersecurity experts and tools qualify for cyber insurance when there's a growing need for a SOC, but they don't have necessarily the resources maybe to build one or acquire one, the parts of one in the way that they need to?
It's a great question, because this is one of the things that we are dealing with as an industry. We understand that if you're a big company and you have hundreds of people working in your IT, and you have the ability to create a SOC by yourself, or to deal externally with a SOC, or deal with everything that you need to deal, it's a different story. The most of the big companies that we work with buy the cyber insurance for the risk transfer. Most SMBs and SMEs, and depending what part of the world you are, because sometimes SMBs in the US can be large corporations in different parts of the world. But talking about small, medium businesses, I think one of the things that they're finding extremely difficult, it's the huge investment they need to do in cybersecurity without really understanding how to do it, where to put the budgets, what are the things that they need in order to buy. Because in the end of the day, they understand insurance, and because they've been buying insurance for their homes, for their cars, for their businesses, they want to buy cyber insurance. They understand that cyber insurance is not just a risk transfer mechanism, but it will help them manage the event. Because as you know, cyber insurance is not just a policy that identifies. One of the parts of the cyber insurance is actually us in being involved and holding the client's hand from the first moment that he discovers that there is a cyber event, either through the incident response, the legal assistance, the PR, the negotiations, the paying of the ransomware. And all of this is probably the biggest driver for SMEs and SMBs to buy the policy. Having said that, they are looking at us and saying, how can we help you? And I know that we have done together something which I think is a good example, because one of the things we are trying to help our clients is find reliable vendors in different parts. So be it EDRs, be it SOC, or whatever. We've done an engagement with you globally in order to help our clients. So A, it reduces the cost, but it saves them. Second, it saves them the need to go and tender out and really understand who is better, because we do it for them, and we do it with many other products that we can help our clients. I think the future lies in many sense in MSSPs and people that will give an integrated solution to these SMBs, because A, they don't have the knowledge, B, they don't have the budget, and probably they don't have they need to run their business. If you are a law office, a small law office with 100 employees or 150 employees, you don't have an IT people in your organization, and really you're looking to find integrated solution that will help you buy the cyber insurance, but also manage the event if unfortunately it happens?
Absolutely. I mean, I'll answer this. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased because we built a company around it. But for that very same reason, I'm a firm believer that the answer is CYREBRO. I think from a sheer numbers perspective, if you look at the ROI, building an in-house SOC today is about a 7-figure task that you're looking at. It's a 7-figure task. It will take you about a year to complete. And at the end of that year and at the end of the at the road, you'll look at it and you'll understand that what you've created is not sustainable. Again, I'm not a carpenter. I can probably build my own desk, but I don't. If I need a new desk, I go to IKEA. That's what they do best. I'm a very strong believer in letting people do what they do best. And cyber security is a profession in and out of itself. I mean, the amount of, and we spoke about it before, the amount of technology, the tech stack that you would require to operate, the versatility of tools and outputs of those tools, the 24/7, the dealing with the alerts, you know, reading the outputs, understanding what they are. It makes no sense for it, especially for an SMB, to keep an in-house SOC. It's just financially and operationally not the right thing to do.
Great. Okay, so I want to wrap up this part of the discussion with another poll. And don't forget that you can ask any questions in the Q&A, so we'll collect them at the end. So the second poll, which I will launch now, is what type of attack worries you the most when it comes to the potential financial loss? And I'll give you all a minute to make your choice. Okay, so it looks like everyone chose, and not entirely surprisingly, we have 70% of you chose ransomware, followed by fraud and phishing somewhat even. So I'll pass it over to Shay and Ori for a second. You know, what are your guys' thoughts about the response of this poll?
I had no doubts because I deal with the clients in different parts of the world, and I see the amount of claims coming. Really, 2023 was another pandemic of ransomware in different parts of the world. And ransomware is not just a ransomware; it's a business interruption. It's something that the company needs to deal. They don't really know how to deal with it. It's the paying of the ransomware, the sanitation of the wallet, getting the right people to negotiate. We're dealing with threat actors. In the end of the day, these guys are criminals, and you need to know if they're credible, if they'll give you the keys back, if you pay, if you get your decryptor, if they don't publish your data. So there's so many things around ransomware that is worrying for everybody. I've even heard the latest last week when I was in a big cyber conference that because those threat actors are quite desperate, because in 22 they were coming. A lot of them were preoccupied with helping their respective countries, Russia and Ukraine. They did not do a lot of business, and as we saw decrease in the amount of ransomware claims in 22, but then it came back in the end of 22. I would say the more fearless, these guys would not dare even use physical threats against CEOs and people in order to make them pay the ransomware. press their clients, do everything. So ransomware is definitely the most worrying part, not just for people on this webinar, but for all of our clients globally.
I'll add my 2 cents to it. I think ransomware is obviously, the golden child of the last 2 years, and that's an obvious choice for number 1. I am surprised that fraud is only at 17%. I think fraud was a major player for many years, and alongside ransomware, it's creeping behind in second place, and it interrupts the business just as much. I'll say this: ransomware is probably, and I know it's a bit controversial, and I'm not going to deep dive into it, I'll just say it at high level. Ransomware is probably easier to defend yourself against if you have the right cyber resilience and hygiene. It's a pretty simple attack to stay clear of. Fraud, on the other hand, is tricky. There's no real way of stopping frauds from coming. It usually falls on the human element, and the human element is always, we're all human, it's always the weakest part, because we can't control it. We're not a computer. I can't program it. And it creates chaos on the business side. I mean, the number of fraud cases that we investigate on a weekly basis is tremendous, and the financial loss behind it, we're talking about 6 figures every attack. So it has, in my heart, it has a respectable second place.
I agree with you, or it's definitely creeping behind, and the human factor is something that is much harder to deal with. Especially now we've seen very sophisticated social engineering attacks and fraud coming. And as we move forward with AI, we'll see much more sophisticated attacks coming because of AI. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
Definitely.
Thanks for that. So now we're going to jump to our Q&A portion. We have a few questions, so we'll read through the questions that were submitted. So the first one is, how does an insurance company validate like today's company's controls, such as like with their questionnaire or just using their questionnaire? And how does it keep an eye out if the customer is evolving and, I guess, maintaining or sustaining those requirements? So probably
so first of all, I'll start with the first part. We have been the only way for us to underwrite is based on a snapshot approach, and the snapshot approach is asking questions. Pretty much like if you want to insure your car, in most places around the world, they'll ask you who is the driver, how old is he, how many accidents you had, what time of the day you drive, but you don't see insurance companies opening the hood and driving and digging into the engine to see if you have oil or your brakes have been changed and so on. So really what we can do is make sure that that we ask a lot of questions. If you are a bigger company, sometimes we ask the CISO to go on what we call a roadshow or an underwriting call, which is sitting in front of very technical underwriters. Sometimes they're engineers, and they would ask him a lot of questions around their control. So that's of course the first part, and sometimes I know it's not easy to answer 100, 200, sometimes even more questions. We do it on a daily basis. There's lots of frustration, but that's probably the only way we can do it right now. On the ongoing part of it, really we cannot, some of the insurance companies do what they call continuous underwriting. So they be looking for information on the dark web, or they'll be monitoring the outside-in assessment, what we call the non-intrusive assessment, maybe on a weekly or monthly or quarterly basis. but we cannot be intrusive. One of the things we can't do is we do not want to be the policeman in the business and say, well, you haven't configured right this new computer, so we are decreasing your insurance by this amount. Insurance is bought on a yearly basis, and because of regulation in different parts of the world and insurance law, insurance can be canceled only in very particular junctions of time, which means either you haven't paid your premium or you've done some fraud. But what we do in other types of insurance, what we call material change in the risk, is something that happens in technology on probably a daily basis.
Okay, thank you for that. Another question we have, I think this one would be directed at Shay. So what are some of the newer, the upcoming criteria for cyber insurance that you're seeing, or that we'll see in the future, maybe the next kind of 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, so the latest thing, I think, if you haven't seen it yet, would be the MFA around your privileged accounts, and some kind of a tool to manage it. This be it a PAM or be it other companies that know how to do it. This is probably because we're seeing a lot of these attack vectors coming from threat actors trying to take over privileged accounts and do with the lateral movement, and that's something that the insurance industry is in the last, I would say, couple of months, making sure that every one of the clients has. Insurers are looking very deeply into controls around service accounts, the amounts of service accounts you have, how can you decrease the amount of service accounts, and of course your backups, your out of date systems, so non-patched computer systems or servers. And I think the next wave will be probably companies that are going above and beyond the threshold will be the ones that will have their premium reduced or their deductible reduced, or will be able to buy more insurance. But I would say in general, what you have seen in the last 6 or 12 months, nothing has changed. So if you are before renewing your policy, there are no surprises for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I think this next one would be for Ori. So there's a SOC requirement, but why would I choose, a SOC versus other solutions like an XDR to meet the insurance qualifications? You're muted.
Yes, I am. That's a good question. I think it's another one of those cases of a little bit of a misalignment of what a SOC is or what a SOC does. An XDR, for all intents and purposes, is equivalent to a SIM, right? It's probably the next generation of a old school SIM, but it's by no means a replacement for a SOC. Again, a SOC is a combination of technology and people and operations and processes and procedures and know-hows. And XDR is simply a tool, right? So you have a SIM, and you have SOAR, and you have XDRs and EDRs and antiviruses and all sorts of things of that nature. They're just a single part of the Swiss Army knife that a SOC is.
Okay. And we'll take one more question just to kind of wrap up for both of you, but I guess for Shay to start. So is cyber insurance a must, or is it a nice to have?
No, I think it's totally a must. It's pretty much definitely for those companies that even traded companies, I would say, the information, the knowledge and the way that we have accumulated and know how we accumulated over the years in the insurance industry, because we're dealing with so many claims on a daily basis, is something that we want to pass on to our clients and help them manage their events. Definitely the SMEs, the SMBs, and even the large clients, and really hold their hand while they're going through this, probably the biggest crisis in the life of a company. I think that when you try to look at the cyber insurance market, and you just need to look at the numbers, because 22 was a year where we ended up already with a premium of $12 billion globally, and with a tremendous growth in the uptake of the policies. But when you look 5 or 6 or maybe 7 years down the road, I think that everyone around the world will have some kind of cyber insurance in their insurance program, because before they buy property insurance or fire insurance, they will understand that this is the biggest risk they're facing. And as pretty much as they've done in the past over the last 300 years, they would like to transfer this risk to somebody and sleep peacefully at night. And that's what we do.
Great. So I don't see any more questions. So I would like to thank both of you again for joining. We really appreciated you taking the time today to explain, about the trends we're seeing in cyber insurance, what it means to have a SOC as part of those criteria. So thank you all for joining as well in the audience. We have a survey that will be sent out tomorrow, as well as the recording of this webinar. So if you would like to share it with anyone, feel free. And so,
Sarah, one thing before we close, I don't want to leave a question unopened. I remember if you can go back to the first slide with the poll.
Sure.
We left it open. I think I need some explanation to people around this. So if we don't have time in this webinar, I'll probably do it offline.
No problem, but I'll share the results of the first poll again here so you can see them.
Yeah. So I would just like to say, cyber insurance is a very robust product. As I mentioned, it does not only cover the first party and the third party, but also the extra services. Just so people know, 90+% of cyber claims around the world are paid. The other part, which is not paid, is because clients come to us 6 or 7 months after the event and want us to indemnify. It does work like that in cyber insurance. And so really, if you're buying the right product and you're buying the right limit of liability, you should not have any problems with coverage not being fully covering the cost of a cyber breach, because it really is a robust policy, and over 90% of the claims are paid by the industry.
All right. Thank you for clearing that up, Shay. We appreciate you addressing that question. Great. So if, again, no more questions, we'll wrap it up, and thank you all for attending. Stay tuned for our next webinar that we'll host. And there'll also be, like I said, a survey sent to you. We really appreciate your feedback and any topics that you'd like to hear about. So thank you again to our guests and to our audience, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.